Okay, and then okay, can everyone, we're good, I think. All right, thank you. Thank you all, and thank you for your patience. Thank you for joining us for another week of our lunchtime Zoom programs. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, we've been doing these virtual programs every Friday for the past 2 months and plan on continuing them through the summer and into the fall. My name is Emily Schlemowitz. I am the curator at the Wisconsin Museum of Quilts and Fiber Arts, and I'm very glad to tour you from my home through our current exhibit, which we have extended through August 2nd. I welcome questions. My colleague Devin, the museum's collections and education manager, is also here, and she will be reading me questions from the chat. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do so by clicking on the chat feature down at the bottom of your screen. So welcome. I'm going to spend the first few minutes talking generally about the museum, what we do, what we collect, and how we got started. So without further ado, so this is the museum. I think probably some of you have been here before. Some of you may be tuning in from as far away as Spain, Ireland. I know we've heard from several of you who are tuning in every week, which I think is great. I'm going to, the museum is located on 1850s German farmstead. However, the museum's roots extend back to 1988 when a group of quilters in southeastern Wisconsin founded the Wisconsin Quilt History Project, whose mission was to preserve the history and creativity expressed in quilts through documentation and research. Since 1988, over 8,000 quilts and their stories have been captured. These records provide the material for an award-winning book, which was first published in 2001, called Wisconsin Quilts: History in the Stitches. It was also republished, I believe, in 2009. So it's a very popular, text. And next year, we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary, which is also the 20th anniversary of the book. And the exhibition will be drawn from History in the Stitches. So we're really excited about that. So you'll have to come visit us in the summer of 2021. Wow. Okay. So in 2001, the same year that the book was published, the Wisconsin Quilt History Project purchased this farmstead as the future home for the museum. And located on about 2 acres. The farm includes 7 original buildings, which you can kind of see here. And also we have some dear friends that always visit us. I thought I would include that. And it's really stone and timber structures, including a dairy with silo. You can see the silo over here. There's a farmhouse, the ice house, a summer kitchen, a smokehouse, and blacksmithery. And then the museum has since refurbished the main barn for use as a gallery and education center, which we opened in 2011. So it's a beautiful space, and we'll go inside in a minute. Let's see. Today, we offer about 40 to 50 educational programs, I believe, each year, and with invited artists from throughout the country, classes for youth and Girl Scout groups, family fun days, as well as our very popular annual rummage sale. But you can see this is one of our board members, Catherine, who teaches a weaving class, I believe every month, Devin? Yeah, every month. For a group of 2 or 3 students. So it's a very intimate class, and actually as staff, we got a chance to take it as a Christmas present this year, and that was a real treat. So I highly recommend it. And then this is an image from our family fun days, which are day-long programs. They're free, they're open to the public, and we do lots and lots of fun fiber-based crafts. So this is inside the barn gallery. It's really truly a beautiful space. It's the barn that's been retrofitted into a gallery, so it's actually a barn within a barn. So between the walls are, they've hidden the electrical and all the things that go into building a building, and then you have this exposed wood, which is really, really lovely. And you have the cathedral ceilings. So there's a lot of light within the space. I mean, not natural light, obviously, because we don't want natural light around fiber, around textiles, but it does have this kind of inner warmth, I would say. So that's the barn gallery, and it's really quite lovely. And this is actually a picture of our biennial. We do a biennial every other year, which is open to Wisconsin fiber artists. So we just closed the one over this winter, but we'll be doing another one in 2022. So please, if you're interested, consider looking at our website around that time, because we'll post a call. Curatorially, we organize about 4 exhibitions per year. Exhibitions draw from our collection, as well as featuring original solo and group exhibitions around historic and contemporary themes. And we do this, all in this gorgeous space. This is a picture of our current exhibition. This is Infinite Ivory and Blue. And this is, for the most part, a collections-based exhibition. We have one artist who contributed a work, which I will show you later. So let's see. Yeah, I will get there. So Infinite Ivory and Blue presents the museum's stunning collection of blue and white work. Quilts, woven coverlets, lace, icots, and historic garments envelop the viewer in a world of blue and white. Unveiling significant works from the museum's vault, the exhibition features one of the oldest quilts in the collection, alongside an array of indigo dyed quilts and coverlets from the 19th and early 20th centuries. The stories told in the exhibition include many noteworthy moments in the museum's collecting history, and I will introduce these collections as we take our virtual tour. And also we have, at the end of this, we have kind of a video tour that Devin did yesterday. So you'll get to kind of see how the whole space works. So we begin the exhibition, we call this I consider this our title wall, so to speak. So we begin the exhibition with one of the oldest quilts in the collection, dated to about 1830. The work has an extremely interesting donation story. It was given to the museum by Family Sharing, which is a local resale shop. An individual dropped the quilt off as a donation with a note pinned to it indicating that it had come from Canada, but could provide no further details. My colleagues, Carol Butsky and Mary Beth Schmidt, who both work in documentation at the museum, believe the quilt to be either French or more likely English. The quilting style whitework, or more commonly known as trapunto, originated in the Mediterranean region of France, possibly as early as the 13th century, and by the 18th and 19th centuries, the style of stuffed and hand-quilted whitework was widely known and popular. And I apologize, it's a very hard work to photograph, which is why I have included some detail shots here. So hopefully you can see it. You can also see it a bit in this one as well. So white on white offered the chance for women to show off their needlework skills, and you can see the quilt is festooned with finely hand-sewn stuffed birds, leaves, flowers, circles, feathers, tendrils, surrounding a central square here. This is pretty typical of a neoclassical design. The quilt has a solid white cotton top layer with coarser woven white cotton as the backing. Again, very typical of Trapunto, which comprises two fabrics quilted together with no stuffing in between. The top fabric is always white cotton, and the bottom linen or cotton homespun. After these pieces were sewn together in an intricate design, the individual parts of the design were stuffed with soft cotton from the back through the loosely woven homespun. And that's how you kind of achieve this sculptural look, sort of this relief, this low relief look, and with the various design elements. It's a very inviting quilt. You really do want to get up close and spend some time looking at the beautiful stitchery and some of the motifs. So very few of these white work quilts show the use of transfer designs, but use instead the inventiveness of handed down patterns. Different motifs came to symbolize different meanings. In this quilt, you have doves, a symbol of peace, which is pretty typical. Oak leaves symbolizing, oak leaves were virility. Yes, oak leaves were virility. And then you have also acanthus leaves, which you can't see, but they're again in this central medallion here, which was a borrowed favorite from neoclassical architecture. So often you'll see these quilts either given as their wedding quilts or their baby quilts. So, you know, christening quilts. But what I find most fascinating about this quilt is the story behind the museum's acquisition. So much of being a regional museum, and Devin can talk more about this later, is that you become a repository for some incredible local stories. And, you know, we're the people who get the calls when a relative finds an heirloom in an attic, or when a resale shop, as is the case in this one, realizes that they have a museum quality piece in their possession. So I think that's really powerful. That's a powerful part of being a regional museum. Okay, so I'm now going to dive into the Joe and Mary Koval collection. This is a really stunning collection, which encompasses a large selection of 18th and 19th century fabrics and toile, as well as 27 vintage quilts, whose geometric patterns, patriotic symbols, and deep indigos capture important themes in the history of American quilts. Among the collection are these outstanding examples of blue and white quilts, dating from the mid-19th century to the early 20th century. So this is one of those. This is a snowflake medallion quilt with a sawtooth border. And frankly, I could stare at this work for a very long time. I think it's just really beautiful, incredible, arresting quilt. It's hand-pieced and hand-quilted from around 1860. Naturalistic motifs such as flowers, leaves, snowflakes, vines have been a favorite design of quilters for centuries, and American quilts shared in this tradition. Most of these types of quilts date to around the mid-19th century, but examples of these motifs were created throughout the history of American quilting. Generally, as is the case with this quilt, the organic subject matter would occupy the central square or central medallion, encircled by either leafy vines, or angular piecing like a basket or a sawtooth border. Blue and white were often used in the snowflake patterns, as it so easily lends itself to describing the environment in which snowflakes fall. So what I find so interesting about this quilt is that it encompasses both the radiating sawtooth border and as well as some concentric circles, which I don't know, I hope you can see in the white part. So that kind of alludes again to this vine pattern. It's almost like they're combining both. Additionally, the triangles of the top sawtooth border are irregular, where she's kind of left in these irregularities where one piece meets the other. And I think that's just really beautiful. I think it really embraced sort of the inconsistency, as though you know, alluding to variations in nature and within snowflakes. So there's something very organic about this work, although also very geometric and kind of abstracted. And to that point, when I was doing research for an upcoming modern exhibition, I found a very similar quilt in a review right here of the 1971 exhibition at the Whitney Museum of American Art titled Abstract Design in American Quilts, an exhibition dedicated to the innovation of historic 19th century examples. In this review, storied critic Hilton Kramer for the New York Times praised for, and I will quote, for a century or more preceding the self-conscious invention of pictorial abstraction in European painting, the anonymous quilt makers of the American provinces created a remarkable succession of visual masterpieces that anticipated many of the forms that were later prized for their originality and courage. And I included this as an aside because as someone who has more of a modern art and textiles background, I immediately recognize the beauty of the abstraction in this quilt, and it immediately draws me in. It's just striking and, you know, interesting that something very similar was part of what is often called, you know, the quilting revival of the 1970s. So it's really, it's great that we have this piece in our collection. I think it really just is just an incredible work. So another very modern appearing quilt is the Tree Everlasting quilt from around 1870. The quilt is again hand-pieced and hand-quilted, cotton and indigo. The Tree Everlasting pattern was a favorite among the Mennonites in the 1870s and 80s. And again, you can see that this pattern has a sawtooth design here with half square triangles and a rope pattern, again in the white here, that runs vertically. And really this pattern lends itself to contrasting colors and was often used in that regard, creating a sense of dance between, you know, the blue and the white. And it really, it's almost electric. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's going up or down, and I love that about it. So let's see. This is another, so that piece was also from the Koval collection. Again, this is another one from Koval. Patriotic symbols such as the eagle, flags, stars, these stars up here, began to emerge in quilts around the Revolutionary War. The American eagle was a popular icon, and quilts featuring the icon enjoyed wide popularity in the late 1780s until the 1840s, and then declined only to be revived again during the Civil War. This quilt is from 1854 and is a Burgoyne surrounded pattern with an eagle and star border. It is hand-pieced and hand-quilted with hand applique around the border within the eagles. The central pattern was named after the defeat of a British general, John Burgoyne. He was a decorated British general who was defeated by a superior American force led by Horatio Gates at the Battle of Saratoga in October 1777. The Battle of Saratoga was the first great American victory, and many historians believe it marked the turning point of the Revolutionary War. You will find this motif in early American woven coverlets and in quilts. The eagles that flank the piece blocks appear in both coverlets and quilts, and the pattern is usually worked in either blue or red on white. So again, patriotic colors. In this case, the blue is a dark indigo calico print. So yeah. Okay, so the last quilt I'm going to talk about today is an early 20th century example from around 1910. And in this instance, we know the maker. Her name was Martha Maddie Johnson. Maddie, or she was called Maddie. Maddie has a deeply personal story. She was married, she was born in 1862 and was married in September 1881 to Seifert Bogan. Several years after their union, Seifert began drinking heavily and abusing Martha. Fearing for her life, she appealed to her father and Seifert's father for help, and they joined together to secure a divorce to protect her. After the divorce, Maddie enlisted in the Wisconsin Christian Temperance Union, the WCTU. And if you're interested in the Temperance Union, the Wisconsin Historical Society has a lot of information and some interesting pictures on their website if you just search their collection. She ultimately became the president of the league in Appleton, and she was known for regularly walking up and down Appleton's main street asking for, sorry, I have a question apparently. Can't read that right now. I'm gonna keep going, and then maybe we'll break after this quilt. And walking up and down Appleton's main street asking for signatures, opposing drinking and promising not to imbibe. Family history says that this quilt was made as a symbol for the Wisconsin Temperance League. The pattern of the quilt is chimney sweep. It is also known as a pioneer friendship album, as sometimes one person made the quilt while with other versions, each friend would make a block. I'm sure you guys do this in your guilds, and then they'd be combined into a quilt. But based on Martha's story, you can see why friendship would be important to her. So in this quilt, you can see there's also a whisker guard, which is at the top here. So you can see there's also a whisker guard. And those were, you know, we actually, Maribeth, I think, has, who's our documentation index manager, she has a collection of whisker guards. And they were sewn on the top of the quilt to do exactly what you think they would do. They were meant to protect the bed covering from, you know, coarse beard hairs. So yeah, Devin, can you share the questions? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing them.
Yeah, no problem. It says, how did individuals keep indigo from bleeding into the white? And I didn't know if you researched that or not, but a lot of times they didn't wash the things, and then indigo is a very color fast dye, so it holds very tightly to the fabric that it is put on. But mostly old quilts are not washed, so they might be spot cleaned, and hence the whisker guard on this one, because cleaning out oil from fabric is, of course, we all know, very difficult. But for the most part, very safe cleaning is how the dye didn't bleed. We see bleeding in a lot of older quilts, especially with reds, which is a less color fast dye. But yeah, so that's, unless do you have an answer for that, Emily? Or is that good?
No, that's great. Yeah, and we are going to talk a little bit more about indigo and that process a little bit later. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you so much. If anybody has more questions, make sure that you ask them in the, and we will get to them when we have a good break or at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, this is just a really interesting quilt in terms of like Wisconsin history and the temperance movement, and thinking about, you know, I imagine getting a divorce in the mid 1800s was not easy, but just really an interesting quilt. So let's see. Okay. So the next object I'd like to talk about is this elegant wedding gown, which is a favorite amongst the staff. I think Melissa shared last week that this was her favorite, one of her favorites in the collection. It too has an interesting personal story and connection with the museum. The wedding dress was made by one of the museum's founding mothers, Marion Wolfe. Marion constructed the dress out of silk from a parachute her husband liberated from Germany. He was in the army. The couple married in 1945 and after his return from World War II, and the new Mrs. Wolfe wore this dress, which she fashioned out of the silk. Not displayed here, but in our collection we also have the remnants of the parachute, and the two pieces have been displayed together at one point, or maybe several points, at the museum. Wolfe was one of the original quilt researchers who helped start the museum. So it's a really incredible piece, and so finely made too, and the silk is just, oh, it's just beautiful. So so I'm going to move on to coverlets. So another significant collection on display in the exhibition is the James Taylor coverlet collection. The museum has an astounding 35 historic coverlets in the collection, donated to the museum by James Saul, James A., and Jane Taylor. The couple enjoyed researching the history of coverlets, their weavers, and the era in which they were created as they added to their gorgeous collection. And when the Taylors heard about the museum's renovation of the barn, they just thought that was the perfect spot for their treasured collection. So the collection demonstrates weaving techniques from overshot and double weave to a variety of traditional patterning. So a bit about coverlets. American coverlets of the 18th and 19th centuries are admired today, for their beauty and rich woven designs. Historically, woven coverlets served practical purposes, namely warmth. They were placed on walls, of homes to protect from draftiness and used as bed coverings. The first woven coverlets in America were probably brought here over with the American settlers, and wealthy households could continue to import textiles from Europe. However, the vast majority of colonists could not and needed to be self-sufficient. At first, women would produce these coverlets at home on a hand loom. Households traditionally had a spinning wheel for spinning linen and woolen threads, as well as a four-harness loom for weaving. By the beginning of the 19th century, however, male professional weavers began immigrating to America from England, Ireland, Scotland, France, and Germany, with the promise of ample employment and political and social stability. So many of these weavers settled in the Northeast. There was also some in the Midwest, and they were often itinerant. So they, men could haul big looms and go from community to community, kind of like folk painters, itinerant folk painters that used to travel the country, and or photographers. So these weavers would go and they would have a booklet of designs, and someone would pick it out, and they would be able to do, they could modify the designs, but for the most part, these were their designs. So they went from community to community, and the museum's collection encompasses the two main styles of coverlets: geometric and figured and fancy. The pattern motifs and geometrics are based on circles and squares. Women would generally produce geometric coverlets for their own use at home or for barter with a neighbor. Figured and fancy coverlets are curvilinear, and we'll get to those soon. Naturalistic styles and can include floral imagery, animals, and architectural elements. The first coverlet we are going to look at is an overshot coverlet. Let's see. I'm gonna keep going here. This is a very old one, and actually we're probably going to take this down and transfer it out. Because it really can't withstand a lot of pressure. So we're gonna probably swap this one, but you get to see it in the slideshow. Overshot coverlets are among the earliest American woven bed coverings. The name overshot describes the weaving technique The horizontal or weft threads were allowed to skip or overshoot 3 or more vertical or warp threads at a time, giving the coverlet a thick but loosely woven appearance. Because of this loose weave, overshot coverlets generally tended to wear out more easily, as you can see with this piece. The warp threads were generally made out of natural undyed cotton, again, which you can see here, and the weft dyed wool. So this would be indigo. Because of the narrow loom frame, these types of coverlets were always made in 2 pieces with a seam through the middle. So this is the seam. So I think this is a beautiful piece. Again, I like the when they kind of get a little hazy or just kind of move in that way. The second kind of coverlet is the double weave, and I couldn't find an example of that in, let's see. Couldn't find a picture of that in my pictures, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. It was woven on hand looms as well as full and partially mechanized looms. Double weaves have 2 sets of warps and wefts, simultaneously producing 2 separate layers of cloth that are interwoven at particular intervals. The pattern on one side of the double weave is repeated on the reverse side, usually in a lighter color. And it can be sometimes confused with the summer and winter coverlet patterning in this quilt. This because it also has 2 sides. So like an overshot, the summer and winter coverlet it's similar to an overshot, but the weaving is much tighter because the weft never goes more than 3 warp threads at a time. So they were able to get this much tighter design. And then the pattern on one side of the double weave is repeated on the reverse side, usually in the lighter color. And that's really, you would display the darker color during winter, and then you'd turn it over and you display the lighter color in the summer. And then the last one is the Jacquard. Another kind of, so the Jacquard, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, was made on a loom fitted with a special mechanical device known as the Jacquard attachment. This mechanism originated in France and was brought to America in the 1820s. Not only did the Jacquard attachment greatly increase the speed for making a coverlet, it also organized the warp and weft threads according to holes on a series of cards that resemble computer punch cards. So, you know, early computer system. These cards activated the loom and thereby dictated the pattern. The Jacquard attachment could also be added to existing looms used to make double weave coverlets. But this attachment was difficult to operate and therefore only used by professional weavers. The advent of this invention meant that for the first time, you could create large unseen coverlets with complicated patterning and elaborate borders, as we'll see here. Actually, this one too, and this one. In one corner of the Jacquard coverlet, the weaver typically put a signature block, and again, you can see that right here, as well as here. And that would identify the maker, the person the coverlet was going to, the town, the date, and the date it was made. We have this one, which has an interesting story. This was made, we know the maker of this one. This was made by Archibald Davidson in 1840. He was born in Scotland in 1771, where he was trained as a weaver. He and his wife Jane had 5 sons, one born in Pennsylvania and the other born in the other 4 born in New Jersey. They also lived for a time in New York. The book American Coverlets and Their Weaver by Clarita S. Anderson states that in 1832, Archibald Davidson advertised his services in the Ithaca Journal and Daily Advertiser as a fancy weaver who had purchased a patent loom, by which he must mean a Jacquard loom. This coverlet is characteristic of a coverlet produced on such a loom, as it does not have a central seam. So you can see here there is no seam. So let's talk about color, because obviously that's kind of the uniting theme of this exhibition. We have a few more pictures of some of the coverlets in our collection. Again, you can see the signature down on the lower right, signature, and then there are similar patternings, like the similar motifs. There's the eagle. I think this is supposed to be the tree of life. So various things that various motifs that continue to come up in textiles. The dove, and an architectural house. So all 4 types of coverlets tended to use the same limited palette. Unlike quilts, which obviously have a multitude of colors available, weavers were limited partly due to the dyes for the wool threads. By far the most popular color was indigo, originally imported from India by the East India companies, but also derived from a wild plant that grew in the southern states. And my colleague Carol Butsky, who serves as director of collections on the museum's board, has written a really wonderful article about the origins of indigo and history within the Americas for the exhibition catalog that accompanies this exhibition, which I will share with you later, the link to later. And she talks about Eliza Pinckney in the South and her development of indigo, her cultivation of indigo. So that's a really interesting connection. You will also see within coverlet some red and natural colors, which would have come from vegetable dyes, most likely. And we do have those as well. Sometimes if you come to the museum, we always have at least 3 or 4 coverlets on display downstairs. So if you ask the front desk, maybe you can come down and see them. Many of the works in this exhibition utilize indigo dyes. It's present also in the quilts that we saw. A bit about indigo: it is one of the oldest dyes used for textile dyeing and printing. A variety of plants in the Indigofera family have been used for centuries in many parts of the world, including Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. Its range of long-lasting colors, it can really have a range of colors. You can do sky blue and to a deep navy, made indigo hugely popular and highly valued when it was first imported from India to the Western world in the late 1400s and early 1500s, resulting in the nickname blue gold. However, Europe, the British Isles, and North America did not have the superior dye stuff until it became readily available through the imports. Synthetic indigo really started in like the early 1900s. So on view as well within the exhibition is this collection of indigo dyed icots. Most of these were used as dress and come from skirts, shawls, and come from Africa and South America. Icot is neither a print nor a pattern. It's a form of dyeing. It involves an intricate production process wherein the yarn is first dyed and then woven on a hand loom. The process of resist dyeing the warps and or wefts before weaving. Resist dyeing is like tie dyeing, where you pinch the areas, and you can kind of see in the picture, we have some wrapped cloths here. So you can see, this is kind of mid-process, or it was used like, they would put down some sort of wax or mud and then dye it and then scrape off the wax and mud, and you would get the patterning. And you could repeat this process several times. in order to build up a complex pattern. So the pattern, you know, the ICOTs really range in patterning. There's geometric, there's floral, we have some human, you know, some figural here, and that's very typical of ICOTs. And also, you know, it would range in terms of blurriness and sharpness. So sometimes you would have, you know, more of a blurry pattern, as in this one to the left, or a very, very sharp pattern as in this one. But it's a very labor-intensive process, and it's so labor-intensive. It's been called the poetry of the loom. It's a really it produces this incredible fabric, so it's really quite lovely. These ICOTs are part of the Richard Dainert collection, which encompasses 230 objects, predominantly from South and Central America, Europe, Africa, and Asia, and showcases really the powerful history of textiles throughout the world. Dainert was a former textile professor, and he's also a fiber artist, and used many of these examples within his teaching. So we're very lucky to have that collection. In addition to the collection works on view, he also contributed a series of intricate thread on canvas works inspired by the historically rich combination of blue and white. These three pieces he calls soft shards, and they're based on the idea of pottery fragments. In fact, he titles them as though they are long lost artifacts. For example, these are, you know, soft shard XA19. You know, it's kind of like he's an archaeologist and unearthing these fragments. To create them, he machine stitches thread on canvas, and they have this. He sets them off within the frame, so there is some dimension there. And I think it would be really nice to read Richard's artist statement, because obviously you're not there, but it's a really quite lovely statement about the nature of his work. So I'm going to read it to you, and hopefully it's not too long. So a shard is defined as a piece of fabric, piece or fragment of a brittle substance, i.e. earthenware or glass. Shards are often found in and around archaeological sites, and by their substance, surface, and a variety of other details, can often indicate the totality of the original form of which they were a part. As with any fragment, the question of its relationship to a one-time whole is posed. The answer often leads to many fascinating speculations and imaginings. It is the latter that I enjoy in creating soft shards of thread and canvas. These soft forms are suggestive of ceramic shards in detailing irregular, broken edges, cracks, chips, and other identifying details of handles, rims, lips, and foot rings. Some shards might visually appear to relate, yet not fit together, while others form a perfect nexus. The surface decoration of soft shards more often relates to the rich color and complex patterning of textiles rather than to ceramics, yet reference to the ceramic shards is ever present. The soft shards are presented within the interior space of a frame that not only references a glass-covered conservation container, but also isolates the fragment for more intimate viewing and study. So we're gonna now switch to the video of the whole exhibition, and but before we do, we decided, you know, we would do a blooper reel. This is my son Oliver, and I tried to do a video walkthrough with him, but it didn't quite work. So anyway, you get to enjoy this, and then we will do a real video walkthrough with Devin. And hopefully the sound works. So that's him, and it's been really wonderful being able to bring him in on occasion to the museum while we're all under quarantine, and he's been at home and not at daycare. So he enjoys it, and he knows this is Mommy's museum. So, and then Devin, I'll let you share the real one. So this is us walking through. Right when you walk in, you see the title wall. That's a feathered star, the coverlets, an 8-pointed star quilt. Applique, another feathered star. It's the white work. There's some lace in the exhibition, which I didn't get a chance to talk about today. Here's the chimney sweep, the overshot, another white work. The lace is from the Lois Marcus lace collection, and she collected lace from throughout Europe during her travels. It's a beautiful wedding dress. And that's a quilt from about in the 1930s.
That's mostly iCats, but then there is a shibori piece that's in the back.
Another feathered star. Thank you.
So that's a general overview of the current exhibition. Very wobbly, sorry, I'm not a pro.
So one of the questions is, just curious, was the exhibit ever displayed in the past? It seems very familiar. So I'm gonna leave that to.
A few of the pieces have been on exhibit in the past, specifically the Koval pieces, and there was a coverlet exhibition, but the museum has a rule that no object can go on exhibition. There has to be a minimum of 2 years in between when it can be shown. So depending on what the exhibit calls for, we may use pieces again because they are from our collection and they are meant to be exhibited when we can. All of the lace is new. We had a lace exhibit within, well, actually it was 2 years ago, so we could have reused some pieces, but all of the lace pieces are ones that you've never seen before.
And we're gonna be opening, so after the show, which we decided to extend through August 2nd, opening August 6th, 5th, yeah. We're going to be doing half the gallery will be the quarantine quilt, and the other half will be more treasures from our collection. So the Baltimore album quilt will come out, which is another Koval collection quilt, and so we're going to keep going with the collection, so you'll see more if you come to the museum. What is the deadline for the quarantine quilt blocks?
June 30th in the mail. We have a question on Facebook about the elephant quilt. Do you have any information on that? We also have one on.
So yes, that quilt is, I think it's 1930s, 1940s. It was given to a reverend, I believe in Indiana, and it was a gift from his congregation. And you can see the elephants have that kind of stylized appeal, which seems very typical of like the kind of a deco feel. So yeah, that's also a Koval collection.
They are applique. Yeah.
And it is applique. Yeah. Is that, yes.
A lot of pieced quilts. Well, not a lot. Many of the quilts are appliqued, but there are like the snowflake is a pieced quilt, and the lightning or tree, that one is also pieced.
I think that's strip piecing. Yeah.
Yes, I am wearing blue and white for the occasion. Always on point.
You look great. So I did mention that we are going to have a catalog with this show. It was something that we could do while in quarantine. So it's going to be print on demand, and it should be posted on our website within the next week. So please look out for that. And there'll be announcements on Facebook as well as in the Barn Blast when that becomes available. It will be full color, and there is a wonderful essay by Carol Butsky about indigo, the history of indigo, and then you'll also be able to see the full range of the exhibition. And Melissa just posted the link to, if you would like to sign up to receive more information, to receive information when it becomes available, you can do so on our website on the exhibition page. Yeah. So if no one else has any other questions, I think we'll just hang out here if you guys want to post anything in the chat, but we would really like to thank you all for coming. We are offering this as for free, but we welcome donations to support the museum and to support our exhibitions and the continued vitality of these programs. So if you don't mind thinking about a donation, I think Melissa has also posted the donation page. So thank you all.
I can play the video.